The balance of power in East Asia has shifted, and not in a way China, North Korea, or Russia will appreciate. Japan just deployed 2 new missiles that greatly extend its range and capabilities to execute counterstrikes. What's more, both are entirely homegrown creations. Their deployment means that large swathes of territory, both at sea and on land, that were previously only reachable by US forces stationed in Japan, are now firmly in Japan's sights. The status quo in the region has changed in Japan's favor, perhaps permanently. Here's the inside scoop on these 2 new missiles and why China, North Korea, and Russia are so alarmed by their deployment. Somewhat confusingly, both of the new missiles are named Type 25. The Type 25 surface-to-ship missile and the Type 25 high-speed gliding projectile. The naming is a quirk of Japanese weapon designation policy. New items are designated by the fiscal year in which they entered service. The 2 new missile types were formally deployed on March 31, 2026, the last day of the Japanese 2025 fiscal year. So, although they differ substantially in terms of specs and capabilities, both share the same name, Type 25. What makes these 2 new systems particularly noteworthy is that they're Japan's first domestically developed standoff missiles, and the first to be deployed to active units. To be fair, the first of the 2, the Type 25 surface-to-ship missile, or SSM, is actually an upgrade of an existing missile, the Type 12. You might expect, given the missile's name and Japanese naming convention, the Type 12 was introduced in 2012 or Q1 2013. In fact, although development was completed in 2012, it was only officially inducted into service in 2015. We'll chalk that off to further quirks in Japanese designation conventions. The Type 12 is a truck-mounted anti-ship missile developed by Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. It's also an upgrade from the aging Type 88 SSM. As the name suggests, the Type 88 was introduced in the late 1980s. The Type 12 upgrade added modern capabilities like an inertial navigation system, or INS, with mid-course GPS guidance. It also boasted greatly improved precision thanks to enhanced terrain contour matching and target discrimination capabilities. Based on procurement orders, roughly 50 Type 12 systems are estimated to have been deployed in total. Later, a ship-launched version of the Type 12, called the Type 17 SSM-2, was introduced in, you guessed it, 2017. Intended for deployment on Japan's Maya-class destroyers, it doubled the land-based Type 12's range to around 250 miles. Now, the Type 25 extends that range again to around 620 miles, roughly 5 times greater than the Type 12. And that's precisely what has the Chinese and North Korean militaries on the edge of their seats. For the first time, Japan has its own true standoff capability. Ukraine's development of locally produced Flamingo, Neptune, FP-7 and FP-9 missiles freed it from dependence on Western systems like Storm Shadow or Scalp missiles for its long-range standoff strikes against Russia. Now, Japan has the same flexibility. As we'll see a little later on, that could be critical in the years ahead. Technically speaking, a missile is generally considered to be a standoff weapon if it has a range exceeding around 90 miles. At that range, the missile can be launched from outside the effective range of most enemy air defenses. Technically, then, the Type 12 is already a standoff missile. But that's not the case when considering China's missile air defenses. Sure, China's Russian S-300 system and domestically made HQ-15 analog only have an effective range of around 124 miles. And the HQ-9's range is roughly equivalent to the Type 12's. However, China's HQ-22 system has a range of around 105 miles. Its Russian S-400 has a maximum range approaching 250 miles, and its HQ-19, intended as a long-range analog of the US's THAAD, around 1,864 miles. Compared to the latter 3 systems, the Type 12 can't be considered a standoff missile. But with a range roughly 2.5 times that of China's most extensive air defenses, the Type 25 SSM is certainly a standoff missile. What's more, Japan intends to further extend the range of future iterations to around 932 miles. But even at its current range of 620, the Type 25 changes the game in and around both China and North Korea. The Type 12's limited range meant that it functioned primarily as point defense. The Type 25's range converts the missile into a long-range precision strike capability that's capable of targeting both naval formations and selected land-based objectives. The upgrade was approved by the Japanese Congress, or Diet, in December 2020. Mass production reportedly began in fiscal year 2023, with deployment accelerated to fiscal year 2025. The Japanese made good on that commitment, even if they squeaked in on the last day of the year. In terms of specs, not too much is known at this point, such as the size of the warhead it carries, the speed, etc. What we do know is that the Type 25's airframe was redesigned to reduce its radar signature, essential for survivability against modern air defense systems. It's propelled by a compact turbofan engine optimized for sustained low-altitude cruise, further minimizing detection during long endurance flights. The Type 25's guidance combines inertial navigation systems and satellite positioning with terrain referencing and terminal radar imaging. The combination enables engagement of moving maritime targets with the finest of Japanese precision. The missile can also receive mid-course updates via network-enabled data links, integrating inputs from maritime patrol aircraft, coastal radar stations, or other surveillance assets in real time. It also ticks another vital box when it comes to modern land-based missiles: mobility. The system is mounted on a high-mobility transporter erector launcher that's installed on an 8x8 wheeled chassis. Each launcher carries 6 missile canisters and can conduct rapid salvo launches before swiftly relocating. As the war in Ukraine has ably demonstrated, in an age of ubiquitous surveillance and kamikaze drones, the ability to shoot and scoot makes all the difference. Taking advantage of Japan's mountainous geography, launcher units can disperse across coastal areas or island positions, fire, and reposition quickly before the enemy can lock on for counterstrikes. While the system is certain to be rolled out broadly across the Japanese armed forces, the choice of locations for the initial deployments is strategic. How so? The first operational units have been stationed at Camp Kengun in Kunamoto Prefecture. From this base, a wide range of Chinese and North Korean targets are now within range. The entire Korean peninsula is now also within Japan's range for offensive strikes on land-based or naval targets, including all of North Korea. Respected comrade Kim Jong-un, as the people call the supreme leader of North Korea, could always strike Japan with missiles. So could his father Kim Jong-il, who preceded Kim Jong-un as supreme leader and ruled from 1994 until he died in 2011 when his son took over. Kim Jong-il also inherited the ability to strike Japan from his father, Kim Il-sung, the founder and first leader of North Korea. By the mid-1990s, Kim the eldest had developed the Hwasong-7 ballistic missile, also known as Nodong, and put it into serial production, but he died in 1994, the year before it entered service. A modified version of the notorious Scud, with a range of around 800 miles, the Nodong could reliably reach out and touch Osaka, Tokyo, and most of southern and central Japan. And since then, with each successive generation of the Kim dynasty, the reach of North Korea's capabilities has only grown. In addition to the Nodong, the current Kim also has the Hwasong-10 at his disposal, an intermediate-range ballistic missile with a range of at least 1,500 miles. That's sufficient to hit all of Japan from the North Korean mainland. He also has full-range ICBMs. The Hwasong-14 has an estimated range of at least 4,000 miles, and the Hwasong-15 is supposedly capable of reaching the continental US. Both could undoubtedly reach Japan. And there are more. For decades, North Korea could strike Japan from standoff distance and beyond, while Japan couldn't pose the equivalent threat. It could only defend itself against incoming missiles using the layered air defenses such as its Patriot PAC-3 and Aegis SM-3. Now the extended range of the Type 25 SSM levels the playing field. You hit us, we hit you. Or maybe we hit you first. These options are now available to Japan, and they give Japan the same kind of leverage over China. Well, not quite the same, but close enough. The difference comes down to the sheer size of China. The Type 25 can comfortably cover the entirety of North Korea. China, on the other hand, extends over almost 6 million square miles, and there's the East China Sea between it and Japan. With a 620-mile range, the Type 25 SSM only covers a small arc of total Chinese territory. Still, what it does cover is concerning enough for Xi. Spread out across the length of Japan's sprawling islands, numerous high-value targets on the mainland will be in range. The juiciest targets are undoubtedly in China's Far East. Shanghai is now within range, as are major cities, ports, and industrial hubs like Hangzhou and Ningbo. These aren't just large population centers hosting some of China's most important companies and industries and driving its global trade. The Type 25 also brings key military installations into its crosshairs. Jiangqiu Airport at Hangzhou is a major military airbase housing the Chinese Air Force, the PLAAF's 83rd Brigade. China's JH-7A fighter bombers operate from this base. There's another major base in nearby Ningbo, the Ningbo Naval Base. It's the headquarters of the PLA Navy's East Sea Fleet and a major command center for naval operations in the East China Sea. Also within range of the Type 25 is nearby Fuzhou Air Base, located near the city of Fuzhou. This airbase is a key node in the concentration of forces opposite Taiwan, and a base for China's air defense missile systems. And there are many more important facilities that Xi would definitely rather be out of range. That's how it's been until now. Similar to the case with North Korea, China has enjoyed the advantage of being able to hit Japan with standoff missiles, while the reverse was not true. The DF-21D, often called a carrier killer, entered service in the early 2010s. Technically an anti-ship ballistic missile, it can of course also effectively strike non-moving targets on land. With a range of up to 1,336 miles, it can reach Japanese territory, including the US bases on Okinawa. China's ground-launched CJ-10 or DH-10 cruise missile is capable of precision strikes up to 930 miles away, and its DF-26 intermediate-range ballistic missile has a range of 2,485 miles, enough to cover the whole of Japan and then some. Like with North Korea, the Type 25 SSM's extended range allows it to reach into sensitive parts of China in the same way, significantly leveling the playing field for Japan. There's also a third region where the new missile upends the status quo somewhat: Russia. From Sapporo in the north, Type 25s could fly over Russian territory and hit Heilongjiang and Jilin provinces in China. The region is considered one of China's breadbaskets, but it's also a key transportation corridor. Rail hubs like Sui-Fen-He and the Liaoji Corridor are vital for land transport to China's northern ports. The border areas have become vibrant hubs in recent years, thanks to the thriving trade that has resulted from Russia being compelled to redirect much of its trade to China due to Western sanctions. Deep and very costly plans are well underway to extend the logistical infrastructure further out, particularly the links to Russia's nearby Far Eastern ports. Much of this critical node in the burgeoning Chinese-Russian alliance is now in Japan's crosshairs, if it ever came to a kinetic conflict between the two nations. In fact, several of those key Russian Far Eastern ports are now also within the Type 25's range. To be fair, Japan doesn't need standoff weapons to reach out and touch Russia with things that go boom. At their closest points, the two nations are only separated by 26 or 27 miles across La Pérouse Strait, which separates Japan's Hokkaido from Russia's Sakhalin. Ukraine has simple FPV drones that can strike further than that. But the Type 25's extended range brings many more troublesome targets into range for Russian President Vladimir Putin: major ports and military installations. The Russian Pacific Fleet stationed at Vladivostok is suddenly within Japan's reach. Khabarovsk is a major administrative and military center and is the headquarters of Russia's Eastern Military District. Japan's relationship with Russia has rarely been easy, with tensions heightened recently because of Japan's pro-Ukrainian position. Russia has held the same standoff missile advantage over Japan as China and North Korea for some time. That advantage has now gone. Japan may not be able to strike much of Russia with its Type 25s, but the regions it can touch could derail Russia's Far Eastern defenses and scupper its economic integration with China. Both would be massive strategic defeats for Putin. Looking for the latest military news and incisive analysis from all the world's major hotspots? That's what we deliver here on The Military Show. Subscribe to the channel now to stay fully informed about all of the most important stories and developments. Now, you may be wondering why a nation with such a high level of technical proficiency like Japan hasn't developed offensive standoff capabilities until now. It was a matter of choice. Following its devastating defeat in World War II, Japan adopted a defense-only military posture. It would only produce and purchase weapons to defend itself against threats, but not offensive weaponry. That posture was made possible by Japan's formal military alliance with the US. Under the Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security, which took effect in 1960, the US is obliged to defend Japan if it's attacked. But the upshot is that all of the offensive weaponry in Japan is packed by US forces at its roughly 15 major bases in the country. In terms of standoff capabilities, the US could strike China, North Korea, or Russia from the F-15E Strike Eagles and F-35A Lightning IIs stationed at bases like Kadana Air Base on Okinawa. Like they've been doing in Iran, these aircraft can fire long-range standoff missiles like the AGM-158 JASSM and AGM-88G AARG-MER. But from Japan's perspective, extensive as it is, that security blanket is no longer sufficient. The security equation in the region has changed dramatically. The pace of development of offensive weaponry by China and North Korea is frenetic, and the risks for Japan rise exponentially with it. Alarmed by these developments, Japan presented a much revised, much more hawkish National Security Strategy, or NSS, in 2022. The new NSS pointedly picked out China as its main threat, with Russia being defined as a major threat. It mandates a near doubling of defense spending to reach 2% of GDP by 2027, double the informal 1% cap that had been in place previously. But perhaps most importantly, for the first time, Japan formally committed to acquiring counterstrike capabilities. Japan had opened the door to offensive weaponry. It could now use standoff missiles like the Type 25 to target enemy bases if an armed attack is imminent. And as you can see from the introduction of the two new Type 25 missiles, Japan isn't wasting any time turning the mandate into reality. The second recently unveiled missile with the designation Type 25 also falls into the category of standoff missiles, but it has a different mission profile: the Type 25 Hypervelocity Gliding Projectile, or HVGP. The HVGP is Japan's first operational hypersonic glide weapon. The iteration that's just been deployed, Block 1, has an estimated range of 185 to 310 miles, but that's not what makes it special. The missile is launched via a solid-fuel rocket booster that separates at high altitude. This allows the glide vehicle to descend at hypersonic speeds exceeding Mach 5 over 3,700 miles per hour, while performing erratic, maneuvering trajectories to evade interception. The HVGP carries a conical boost glide warhead with small control fins for lateral and vertical adjustments. And like its namesake, it uses satellite navigation, inertial systems, and terminal radar infrared imaging for guidance. Due to its smaller range, the HVGP doesn't offer Japan the same deterrent value as the longer-range SSM. It's primarily designed for remote island defense rather than counterstrike operations. But what it lacks in range, it makes up for in sneakiness and versatility, and that makes it ideal for shorter-range counterstrike operational profiles. The HVGP's maneuverability makes it extremely difficult to track and bring down. It's great for attacking enemy bases, targeting high-value assets like command nodes, amphibious assault groups, and carrier decks using armor-piercing or explosively formed projectile warheads. In closely contested island chains, HVGPs could create a deterrence all on their own. Enemy ships and missile launch sites would be forced to stay beyond their range for fear of stealthy, practically impossible to intercept missile attacks. With sufficient numbers in place, the combination of Type 25 SSMs and HVGPs could significantly extend Japan's defensive envelope to cover the East China Sea and regions near Taiwan. Current Block 1s are primarily for training and bedding in. The Block 2 variants, scheduled for the 2030s, will have ranges of 1,300 to 1,800 miles. That will make them even more of a counterstrike threat than the current Type 25 SSM, both in terms of range and maneuverability. Japan also has plans for additional ship and air-launched variants for fiscal year 2027 to create a layered, distributed strike architecture. That architecture integrates domestic systems like the two new Type 25s with established systems from Japan's allies, primarily the US. Japan is planning to deploy US-made Tomahawk cruise missiles on all 8 of its Aegis destroyers. Also in March 2026, the Kongo-class destroyer JS Chokai was successfully upgraded to launch Tomahawks. It's the first time a Japanese warship has been able to strike targets over 1,000 miles away. The JS Chokai reportedly completed crew training and modifications at Naval Base San Diego ahead of schedule, with live-fire tests scheduled for August 2026 before returning to Sasebo Naval Air Base. There's just one problem. Japan might have to wait a while before its Tomahawks are delivered. Japan ordered 400 Tomahawks, 200 each of the Block 4 and Block 5 variants, in a $1.7 billion contract in 2024. Deliveries were planned to be completed in 2027. However, the US has made such heavy use of Tomahawks against Iran that an already thin supply chain has been disrupted. The US has been rapidly plowing through its stockpiles at an unreplaceable rate. Before the war, it had anywhere from 3,000 to 4,500 of the Block 4 and 5 variants on hand. It reportedly burned through 400 within the first 72 hours against Iran, and 850 in the first month. Meanwhile, annual production has been hovering between just 60 and 90 per year. Sure, the US Department of Defense and Raytheon established new agreements in February 2026 to ramp up production to 1,000 Tomahawks per year, but that's going to take a while, and the needs of the US Armed Forces are always likely to come first. For Japan, the situation only hammers home the strategic value of being able to develop its own advanced weaponry. We've already seen something similar with Ukraine's endless struggles to get its hands on increasingly scarce PAC-3 missiles for its Patriot systems. Indeed, the war against Iran is placing increasing pressure on US stockpiles of all kinds of weapons that are at the heart of all its allies' defenses. You can see why military and political leaders from around the world, from the EU to Japan, are calling for the kind of weapons self-sufficiency that Ukraine has already been forced to develop. Japan's new Type 25 missiles have already given the likes of Xi, Kim, and Putin plenty of extra food for thought. They've leveled the playing field for Japan considerably, but in the long run it might be the localized production of these two systems that provides Japan with the biggest strategic benefits of all. Another nation actively pursuing greater military self-sufficiency within the framework of deep alliances is the UK. Check out this video about how the UK is making a massive military comeback, and thank you as always for watching.